afraid of the dark.
People who have survived suicide attempts were asked about their thoughts at that moment, and here's what they replied. Well, I tried to hang myself when I was 15. I have a congenital defect, deformed legs, and I just couldn't take the bullying anymore. Anyway, I looped a belt around my neck, secured it in the door lock of my closet. I stood on a chair and tried to muster the courage to kick the chair out. And then I accidentally knocked over the chair. I hung there for about 15 seconds, long enough for everything to go dark. And then the cheap plastic belt snapped. I fell to the floor and just screamed out loud. Because firstly, the belt snapped, and I was still alive. And secondly, thank God the belt snapped, and I was still alive. I want to say a big thank you to everyone for your wonderful and kind words, as well as for your support. As for what happened to the people who bullied me, one of them is in prison, and the other is soon to be a CEO. I have no idea how that happened, but oh well. I found what I'm truly passionate about, comics and animation, and everything started to go uphill. And for those currently struggling, please don't give up. I decided to hang myself with an extension cord from the rafters of my garage. I decided to make a trial attempt to make sure the beam would hold before saying goodbye to my family. During this trial attempt, I slipped off the chair and actually hanged myself. The panic I felt in those few minutes while dangling was all I needed to convince myself that I should live. I urgently needed to tell my mom I love her before I go. And my dad too. I could only think of getting out of the noose to give them a proper farewell and let them know how much I love them. Thankfully, I managed to get back on the chair, and I realized I wasn't ready for this. There was so much love left in me. I felt it gave me a second chance to understand that I didn't want to go through this again. I'm doing fine now. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a man who would move mountains for me. I'm happy my attempt failed because I'm sure I wouldn't know how I'd feel if I had written a farewell letter. I had a very mundane reaction too. Just a well. Alright, then I downed my entire bottle of meds and lay in bed, my heart racing until I passed out. Woke up feeling like crap, but still alive. It wasn't a pivotal moment for me at the time, but I just agreed that I guess I should keep living. When these thoughts resurfaced a couple of years later, I decided to call a hotline hoping someone could talk to me about it. It was a strange feeling, wanting to die and wanting to be talked out of wanting to die at the same time. Anyway, I was persuaded to call the police, and then I was taken to a psychiatric hospital for 72 hours. While I was there, I met a doctor who said I had been misdiagnosed my whole life, and he prescribed me a medication that actually worked for the first time. It was like what? How I hanged myself, and right after hanging, I suddenly gasped and woke up again. I realized I had grabbed the rope and lifted myself slightly to take a breath, and I couldn't imagine how I managed to lift myself while unconscious. I just tell myself now that I was saved for a reason, and I need to figure out what that reason is. It doesn't make me want to try it again. I was a teenager. I woke up and immediately started guessing what day it was, why the meds didn't work, and then checked if they vomited me out. I felt sick, so I went upstairs and found that 3 days had passed. I was a bit swollen, And my dad didn't notice that I, by the way, wasn't quite alive or okay. He didn't even know if I was home. I moved out shortly after that. I didn't regret trying to do it, and I didn't vow to never do it again. I just resigned to it. I felt bad for many more days. I took a sleeping pill in the bathtub when I was 15, waited for a while, then blacked out for a couple of hours. No one checked on me because I often took long bubble baths. I woke up in cold water and mustered enough strength to try to act normal, somehow managed to get dressed. Then I tried to have dinner with the family, but my legs felt like they were made of cement. My heart raced. It was very hard for me to even open my mouth, and so on. Finally, I confessed everything to my mom, and it was awful. We went to the hospital, where she didn't even look at me once, and ended up spending a hellish night there. After talking to several psychiatrists, they let me go home, thankfully. I remember how my family didn't want to do anything with me for many months after that. Now I'm just over 20, and I feel much better. I still have intrusive thoughts, and my bipolar has gotten worse, but I'm much better now. It's not so much the thoughts as the realization that my mom wasn't upset that I tried to end my life, but she was angry because the rope was nailed high to the ceiling and rubbed off the paint before it broke. It's strange, but somehow perhaps I should be grateful to her for that brief moment of honesty. One of the reasons I put the rope around my neck was because I thought something was wrong with me, that I was broken, that I was unloved and fundamentally incompatible with the world around me. At that moment, I felt anger again, not hopelessness, and I realized that it was actually my mom who was broken. In the past, I've had many attempts, but one has stayed with me forever. I must leave life. I can't do it. I have to die while no one sees that I'm not asleep. Maybe I can go outside and throw myself under a car. I just remember how desperately I had to try to die at that moment. Like an animal backed into a corner, I was terrified. I attempted a drug overdose, so my body was still sluggish. I managed to rip out the IV drip before a crowd of nurses came to restrain me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and fought with all my might, which honestly wasn't that much. I was ready to cause pain to those who tried to help me, just so I couldn't kill myself. Sometimes people don't understand how deeply someone falls when they want to die. I'm not very eager to share this because I don't know if it will help people going through it right now. But I've seen and read about so many people who changed their minds when it was too late, or realized that all their problems were trivial when they were on the brink of death. But that didn't happen to me. When I started vomiting blood and bile, all I could think was, I hope these pills don't make me vomit right now. I was also disgusted and ashamed, but I didn't want to live and didn't change my mind. When I woke up, I was covered in blood, a little from vomiting, but mostly on my hands and feet, which I had heavily cut with blades. I lay on the floor in my hair, as well as clothes, and with a face wet from tears. I was so tangled up, and I felt like I had ruined my life in every possible way, and I never felt as disappointed and disgusted with myself as when I realized I hadn't been able to do it. And honestly, I would like this incident to be my wake-up call or the moment when I changed, but it's not. I felt the same disgust for several years after that. For me, it was confirmation that I would never be happy and never stop wanting to die. I can't explain why I felt that way. I just believed that something was wrong with me, an illness or something about who I was as a person that told me I would always want suicide. If I could go back and meet a younger version of myself, I would hug her so tight. But I don't know what I would say to her. I don't know what clicked in my head. I don't know what's happening in my brain now that wasn't happening then. I think I finally realized that it's up to me. Of course, you can't just think your way out of depression, but you can learn to cope with it better and ultimately figure out how to fight it. Over time, I completely changed my attitude. Depression still plagued me. It still remained in my head, but I found a way to make it quieter and cause me less pain. Very, very slowly, I even found a way to be happy. I realized that my happiness is my responsibility, and I couldn't just sit and wait for depression to leave me. And now I can honestly say that I'm a very happy person. I enjoy life, and even in stressful times I'm okay, and I can handle it while still remaining happy inside. It took a long time, but it was the most worthwhile thing I've ever worked on. Being happy is perhaps the best thing that will ever happen to you. At the time, I found one quote that I really liked. No matter how far from the truth pretense and lies lead us, the truly objectively beautiful remains untarnished. I thought about it a lot and still do. No matter how bad things are, no matter what terrible things my brain throws at me, there is objective beauty in this world that cannot be taken away. I worked very hard to start seeing it everywhere. Flowers, the moon, my cat, my mom, strawberries, anything. I just reminded myself that these things will always be beautiful to me, and my depression won't be able to stop that. After all, finding beautiful things wasn't that difficult. I saw them everywhere, and I still do. Another one from Oscar Wilde: the only advantage of a useless thing is that it evokes strong admiration. All art is absolutely useless. When I first heard this quote, I considered myself useless. This quote made me smile. Everything here is actually useless. The point is just to love things and sometimes allow them to love you.